We are in the series called My Dysfunctional Family. It's an interesting topic. Just want to put everybody at ease, just so you know. We've all got a dysfunctional family. So there's some sort of dysfunction in everybody's family, whether it's your nuclear family or extended family, however that works out. So I want to start with a question today because Matt promised you a big question in last week's message that we're going to cover today. I don't want to give it to you right off the bat. So there's a question I'm getting to later, but this is a starting question to get us to the... You guys, it's confusing. Let's just start with the question. Here it is. I want to ask you this. What is your family's favorite question? Think about this. I'm going to go ahead and share our family's favorite question. Well, at least the one that comes up the most. I don't know if it's our favorite question, but man, it comes up a lot. So in our family, I mostly make dinners. So I'm the one that preps it because my schedule, I get to work really early so I can go get the kids from school and get them to their after school stuff. And I get home before my wife gets home from work. And so I'm often prepping meals, but I don't know which meals we're doing. So oftentimes I'll forget what I'm supposed to be cooking that night and prepping. So I'll ask that morning before I leave, I'll say, hey, what's for dinner? And my wife will tell me. And by 3 o'clock, when I'm heading home and heading to get the kids from school and blah, 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 I've forgotten. So I will text again, hey, what's for dinner again? And then I will get home and I'll start making it. And the first kid will come in and say, hey, what's for dinner? And I will tell them. And the second kid will come in and say, what's for dinner? And I will tell them. And the third kid will come in and say, hey, what's for dinner tonight? And I will tell them. And not 30 minutes later, my wife will come in the door, and one of the kids will ask her, what's for dinner? It's like we are all concerned about the dinner time. That is our favorite question. I don't know if it rings a bell with you guys, but that's what we tend to do. It just comes up almost every single day. It's like, what's for dinner? What's for dinner? For some of you, it may be something totally different. I know the students are in the room. Some of you middle schoolers and high schoolers are in the room. For some of you, the family's favorite question you think is, have you done your homework? Or have you cleaned your room? Or how long are you going to be on that computer screen today? Like whatever it is for you that you think is the family's favorite question that just keeps popping up all the time. If you're in your 20s, I just remember this in my 20s. I remember thinking like, hey, what are the plans this weekend? Like that was the question. You ask that all the time, like what's going on this weekend? Well, we got any plans? You can do anything? You do anything? You do anything? And then the second question right after that for those of you in 20s is, well, do I have the money to do that? Because you're not sure, right? You're looking at your budget going, I hope I can do that. I hope I can. For some of you in the room, it's something totally different. I mean, some of you guys get these really uncomfortable questions, and it seems like everywhere you go, they ask you the same question, like, hey, so what are you going to be doing with your life? And you're like, well, I'm doing something with my life right now. So why are you asking that weird question? For some of you that you get asked all the time, well, so what about, have you met that special someone? You know, you're single and you're looking around. It's not like you're not looking. And you're like, no, quit asking awkward questions. I don't know what it is that your family's favorite question is, but I want to give you a question I think should become your family's favorite question. We're not going to get to it for a minute, though, because I want to review real quick where we're going, where we've been with Matt's message so you can see where we're going today. But remember, Matt talked about this idea that we have an ideal family situation we're all shooting for. There's an ideal we all have on the board, right? And that ideal, we don't want to stop shooting for it. Like, I know it seems impossible to get there, and Matt did a great job. You guys, if you didn't hear last week's message, go on YouTube and watch it or go to the podcast and listen to it. But there's this ideal we shoot for. Some of you in the room, your ideal is that your kids will behave when you go out to dinner, right? And the ideal situation is that you go to a restaurant, you sit down, and your 3- and 4-year-old, just for some reason, they just totally switch into this mode where they do whatever you ask them to do, and they don't scream and holler, and they don't kick and scream when things don't go their way. Like, I know what it is. You feel this tension because I felt it. My wife and I, we didn't go out to dinner for a long time until our kids were old enough to do that, right? There's this ideal you have in your head. For some of you, it's holiday dinners. This ideal, the way the family gets together and nobody argues about politics or nobody argues about what happened last year at Thanksgiving. And you just have this ideal set in your head of who shows up and when. And you always have that one person you hope doesn't show up. That would be the ideal situation, but you know they're probably going to, right? And you have that in your head. And then you're dealing the whole time with the ideal, with this reality. And that reality is that, man, being divorced and taking care of our kids together now that we're separate is really complicated. And the reality is that having kids is hard. And sometimes you feel like all you do with your partner is just talk about your kids. You don't ever have a life outside of that. And it's really hard sometimes to watch your adult children make the same mistakes you made. And they don't come to you to ask questions, and you want them to avoid all the things that you did, and you were like, you just don't know how to jump in and help because you're removed now. They're adults, and you're trying not to be in their business, but it's hard. Reality is that we never feel like we can get to the ideal. Remember, and Matt said this is what got me last week. But do we give up on the ideal? Do we stop shooting for what's best for our families? Do we just start saying, well, this is all it is, and this is the reality, and this is the way it is, and we lower our standards for what's best for our families? Or do we lean into what Jesus did for us, who said, there's this gap between the ideal and the real, and I came to give you grace that is greater than that gap. I came to give you a forgiveness that's full, so that when you don't experience the ideal, you still get to grab onto my grace that can move you forward and gives you the strength to keep fighting for something that's up here. He never lowered the standard for us. He didn't lower the standard for our families. So here's where we are. When we think about that and we think about what our ideal is for our family, here's what I help you figure out today. This question that we're going to try to make the center point of our families, even if you're not a believer, if you don't have any faith in Jesus and that is not something that you feel like is a part of your life, that's okay. This question can still change, and I promise if you try this out, it will change over time the family dynamic in such a way that you will find this one question switches everybody's perspective, especially your own. So here's where we're going today. I want to talk about a passage written by a guy named Paul. Paul was one of the early followers of Jesus, and Jesus modeled what this question is going to get to, that we're going to get to in a second. I'm going to release the question. I keep holding it out there like it's something really big, and when you get it, you're going to be like, that's all it is, but then you're going to be like, oh, wait, that's hard. So just hang with me. But Jesus modeled this with his disciples and with every single person he was close to. He modeled this one idea. And you guys know what it is. I mean, Jesus put together the perfect model of how to treat the people around you. He always looked out for their good. He always looked out for what was best for them. He was willing to wash their feet. He was willing to put his life on the line. He was willing to die for them. And he rose again and still tried to serve them well. So Jesus modeling this put this whole new perspective on family. And I just want to just think about this culturally. In Jesus' day, that is no different than today. Families operated a little bit differently than today. But they still didn't, the family norm was not to make this sort of like otherness the centerpiece of the family. Like serving others was not the point. Like in Jesus' culture today, to come in and start showing that you were to serve others and give to others. And Jesus even said, like, you should take off your coat. If they need your coat, you take off your outer garment and you give it to them as well. Like if they ask you to go 1 mile, you go 2. Like to do the extra for everybody around you to serve them well. And so this just blows up the idea of the family. And for us today, it's no less. It's just huge for us to think about. And Paul writes this letter. He wrote in several different letters this idea about family. But I want to look at Colossians. And I debated whether or not I could say the word from the city of Colossae. I don't know how to say the Greek one. But I'm just going to say from the letter going to the people called Colossians, right? He wrote this letter and he talks about this one section of family. And listen, normally you've read this section and you've read it in little chunks. And we're going to read it in little chunks. But I'm going to put all the chunks together because I want you to see that Paul is doing something unique when he teaches this to the family as a whole. He's trying to show you guys as a family, show us as a family, our dysfunction is there, but there's a way for us to combat that dysfunction if we have the right question, we have the right frame of mind. So let me go to Colossians. I know that's a lot of setup. But Colossians chapter 3 says this, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Wives first. Husbands, number 2. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Wives and husbands. Who's he go to next? Children. Obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Wives, husbands, children. Who's he go to next? Back to fathers. Do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. You've never read these together, probably. You've thought of them as separate commands, and maybe in the past you've had pastors talk about each individual one. I just want to talk about them as a whole for a second. Paul leaves nobody in the family out. Paul is addressing the entire family here and helping them point each individual toward the other. The idea in this family situation that Paul says is the ideal for a Christian, Jesus-following family is not that you're going to have it put perfect and put together, but that your focus should always be on the other. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Children, obey your parents. And fathers, make sure that the rules you set for your kids and the guidance you give your kids does not embitter them and doesn't discourage them. This is about the ideal being mutually submissive to each other. Go to that next slide. The ideal we're shooting for, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a family of Christ followers, you're shooting for mutual submission. That we all should be watching out for the needs of the other person, especially in our unique families, right? And we know this. Matt talked about this back in February. In our marriages, be mutually submissive. Now in our families, we're talking about this idea of mutually submissive. Now, what does that look like? What are we talking about when we say this and we shoot for this ideal? We know we're not going to hit it every single day, but what is it we're talking about? Let me break down really quickly just the basic facts of what this means. This means, go to that next slide, that your time and your money, any resources you have, I know kids in the room are like, I ain't got any money. You have resources, kids. Your parents gave them to you. You could use those for the good of the others around you, even your siblings. New concept for some of you, right? Energy, the energy you have. Some of you in the room have energy to give to the other people in your life. You're told you're a high energy person. You know, you could use that for the good of others and not just to annoy them. I'm pointing to me. Abilities, your talents, your power, your authority that you have as the parents in the room. Your influence you have with the people in your family. Did you know all of that could be used for the good of the other people in your family? Anything. That's what mutual submission looks like. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Let me just give you a few examples. Ready? Listen, my kids are wonderful. They're amazing. They're very artistic. Each and every one is artistic in their own different ways, so I'm not going to point out any one and embarrass any one of them. But I just want to publicly tell you guys, my kids use some of these things for my good all the time. For my birthday, my kids made me handmade things for my birthday. It was wonderful. They used it for my good, right? And you know what I feel like I do really well for them? I make sure and make time for them in a way that is unique to each one of them. I try to be available to them. Now, I'm not great at it. Do I always hit the ideal? No. Do I sometimes work too much in the evenings? Yes. Do I sometimes disappoint them because I tell them, no, I can't do that right now? Yes. But what am I shooting for? I'm shooting for using my time, and my money, my resources, my energy, my abilities for their good. And this is what it looks like. And some of you guys, yeah, but you don't know my wife. I mean, you just don't know. Man, if I try to use, there's no way there's going to shoot for this idea. Mutual submission, there ain't no way she's going to do that. Some of you are like, you just don't know my husband. There's no way he's ever going to do this and start looking toward other people. You just don't know what to deal with. Man, you don't know my kids. I mean, your kids are perfect. Well, they're not. But some of you in the room are like, there's no way this is possible. That's the point of this series. Do you understand? Listen, if you're a follower of Jesus today, do you understand that's the point of the series, that we all have dysfunction? It's not like we look in the mirror and we're like, oh, I got this perfect. We should go talk to the other dysfunctional people about this. No. We all struggle with this. We all try to figure out how to do this really, really well. A Christian family, the ideal for a Jesus-following family is to shoot for this ideal. And let me just give you the question. There's one simple question you can make the center point of your family. You can make this the thing that your family loves to ask. And it takes practice. This is like easy. I know I use this analogy all the time, but I keep telling people, like, strengthening your faith is like strengthening your body. If you stop using those muscles, they will atrophy. But what better way to get better at loving like Jesus than to start with the people that most annoy you every single day, the people you live with, right? You get a chance every day to flex your love muscles. So here's the question. Here's the question I want to put the centerpiece. You ready? Groundbreaking question. I've been saying, what can I do to help? What if that became your family's favorite question? What if everybody in the family, listen, whether you got it right every day or not, but what if it became the centerpiece of how you tried to make your family work? Dads, you in the room would be asking your children, hey, what can I do to help you today? I know some of your dads are like, wait a minute. I'm the dad of the family. I make the rules. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Everybody has a unique role and responsibility in the family. Parents get to make some rules. That's right. I'm not saying you back off of it and you let them do whatever you want. This is not about letting your kids just run free and run rampant and do whatever. Boy, I just got just serving my kids. They got out there and they wanted to destroy stuff. I'm just loving. No. I'm not saying that. Here's what I'm saying, dads. I'm saying, have you thought about the way that you could actually help your kids? Even if they're adults, what can I do to help is the question. Some of you wives, what can I do to help? I know you've been at work all day, but you get home and you're tired, and you look at your husband and your kids, hey, what can I do to help? That takes energy and time, doesn't it? This is hard work. Students in the room, look at me right now, students. I'm talking to you, nobody else in the room, just students. Middle school, high schoolers, you will absolutely destroy your parents tomorrow if you wake up, I don't know, about 11 a.m. and you go, hey, what can I do to help? If you will just send them a text while they're at work and hey, I know you're busy at work. Could I do anything today to help? They will die, okay? But listen, it will change your point of view. Listen, they may not know what to tell you. But if you ask them, they might give you something and you could actually help your parents. Are you kidding me? Listen, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm going to embarrass my children right now. If they ever offered to do the dishes, I would flat out faint. Flat out faint. I don't know how many times. Listen, they don't know this, but I don't want them to do the dishes. I just want them to do them with me. I just want them to stand there beside me and talk while we do a few things. It takes 10 minutes. Kids, please. I'm begging you. I'm just talking to my kids right now. Would you just offer to do the dishes one day this week? What can I do to help, Dad? You can help me do the dishes this week. You got it, girls? They're sitting right over there. Listen, this question, and you look at it and you go, this is so simple. It is. But how many times do we just not do the simple things? How many times do we get distracted by what is so important? And by the emotional distraction of our own brains, when we come home from work and we're tired and we're exhausted from already doing a hard job, and we come home and we're supposed to give more of ourselves away. I know this is difficult. Listen, you're not going to get this perfect. This is not about me looking at you like, my family gets this right. Why can't you? That's not what I'm talking about. This is us all together trying to figure out, if that's the goal, do I really want to lower the standard? Do I just want to get by today? Do I just want to get by for a lifetime with my family? Or do I want to have this ideal that we keep shooting for together? What can I do to help? And here's what I know. And high schoolers, if you're here last Wednesday, this is what we talked about. And I even gave you this question without you guys even realizing it. But we talked about this last week. Listen, do you want to be the person that your family loves being around? You get really good at asking this question to everybody in your family. You know what suddenly starts to shift in your family when you become this person? You know what starts to shift? Everybody around you starts going, wow, I love being around that person. And it's not so they can take advantage of you. They feel loved and valuable because you're offering what you can to help. It doesn't mean you always can help, but you're willing to do what you've got and use your time and your money and your resources and your talents and your abilities and your energy and everything that you've got to add to the family and using it for their good, not just your own. And some of you in this room, I know, because I have a tendency to do this as well. You look at this question and going, I don't want to ask this question because I'm afraid of what they'll answer. And I'm afraid I'll be on the hook for something that I really don't want to be doing with my time. I know. But here's what this question does. It forces those of us who have this selfishness thing inside of us that wants the family to be all about us and to serve our needs. I'm the dad. And by golly, they owe me. And shift my perspective to being like, no. That's not what Jesus modeled, is it? Jesus didn't come to earth and say, now you're supposed to serve me. I'm the king of this world and I created it and you better be doing what I say. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What did he do? He used his authority and his influence and his power and his time and his resources to save me. And that's why Paul wrote in a letter he wrote to the church in Rome, in Romans chapter 5. I just want to remind you guys, if you're following Jesus, this isn't an option. This is a command from the guy who gave it all up for you. And listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus this morning, let me just frame this for you to understand why we as Jesus followers take this so seriously, and why when we get it wrong, we have to depend on the grace that we say Jesus gives us, because this is huge. You can try this. If you're not a faithful person in Jesus, and this is the question you're going to try, it will help your family, no doubt. This is a principle that will work for you. But listen, when you mess it up, here's what we depend on. We are looking toward a Savior who modeled this perfectly for us. And in Romans chapter 5, Paul wrote this to his family. Can you guys skip to that? You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Jesus did not wait for you to get your act together to serve you. He did not wait for you to get it right. He did not wait for you to deserve his death. We had nothing. We had no power to save ourselves. This is the power of Jesus' death and resurrection. He did it not because we deserved it, but because his love for us overpowered what we did not deserve. He died for the ungodly. That's us. We don't live godly lives. We mess it up. We hurt people. We don't serve well. We don't love well. We're selfish. We lie. We cheat. We make huge mistakes, and we hurt people we love the most. And in that situation, Jesus said, there's still an ideal I want you to shoot for. And the only way I know to fix it is to come in and do what you cannot do. You can't fix you. So listen, Jesus following families. I know, just like my family, you're dysfunctional. You've messed it up. You don't do it right. In fact, some of you are carrying a guilt and a shame for things you've done in the past. I get it. Me too. And it's weird and awkward to talk to people in your family about it. But listen, if you're a Christ follower, this is what you're shooting for. You're shooting for a family who decides to make this question the centerpiece of how we respond to one another. We're shooting for families who get it wrong, but they keep trying to get it right, and they use Jesus' forgiveness to keep moving forward. Just imagine, would you guys dream just a second with me? If you need to close your eyes to dream this because it's hard to focus, you can. But just dream for a second about this. Imagine for a second that tomorrow morning, all the people in your family wake up, and they're going to do their best to make this question the centerpiece of what they do. And they're going to start putting their focus on the other people in the family besides themselves, and not be so selfish and not be so, I do this and I do this and I do this, but they're going to think about, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? What would happen in 1 week if that were happening in your family? You know what a habit is? A habit is simply a thing that you do over time that changes the way your brain works. Did you know that? All it does is rewire the way your brain works. A habit is a thing that makes your brain do something automatically that it didn't do automatically before. And you know how you get a habit? You practice doing that thing, whether your brain wants to or not, until your brain gets the message, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do. That's how you break bad habits. You keep doing the good habits. Listen, so I want to challenge you guys. A family experiment. You guys go back to the family experiment side. 7 days. Just 7 days. I'm not asking for 30. I don't know who. There is some research behind the 30-day thing, I think. But listen, habits can be created quicker than that. All you need is encouragement and a system for when you mess it up. That's right. You just need a system and a way. You know you're going to mess it up this week, and you're not going to do it every single day. But the idea is that when you do mess it up, you have a way to manage and get back on, right? So when I started running about 6 years ago now, I thought the thing is to actually run. That going for a run was the thing that would create the habit. It was not. Do you know what created the habit of running for me? Putting on my running clothes. Weird, right? But if I put on my running clothes, whether I felt like running or not, even though I put them on and I started making dinner, by the time dinner was done, I'd be like, well, I'm in my running clothes. I might as well go. Weird, right? Why is that the thing that created the habit? I don't know what it is for you for asking this question. You may have to put it in your phone. You may have to put a reminder in your phone to be like at noon, be like, oh yeah, I need to ask somebody what they're going to do to help. I don't know, maybe that'll help. Maybe you need to sit down in the morning and you need to look at it and think about every person in your family. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? What can I help? And map it out. Maybe you're kind of on the fly person. And you know what you need to do? You need to stop and remember how much you love your family. And that emotion will just bring up in you and you'll want to be like, that's it. I don't know what it is that'll create this habit. But here's the challenge. Students in the room, you ready? Tomorrow morning, you got to remember, drop your parents dead with this question, right? What can I do to help? Wives, ask your husband, what can I do to help? Husbands, ask your wives, what can I do to help? And parents, as odds of sound tonight, tomorrow morning, before you go to work, ask your children, hey, what can I do to help? How can I leverage my time, my money, my resources, and what I have to show, my energy, my abilities, everything that God has given me? What can I do to add that value to your life? You don't have to become a pushover parents. You just need to be aware of your kids' needs and what you can do to help move them forward. So, my final challenge is just to go back to the question. What can I do to help? You figure it out. It's on you now. And if you're not a Christ follower, optional. If you're a Christ follower, you don't have much choice. This is what it means to follow Jesus. He modeled it. He did it for us first. And he said, go and do it for the other people in your life. Now, I'm going to end with this. The next couple weeks, Matt's going to be back next week. Do not miss this next message. And then I'm going to come back the 25th. And what I'm going to cover the 25th is I'm going to be walking you through what do you do when you've just messed this all up and it's just totally awful. How do you make it right when it's just a mess? We're going to talk about that, but the next 2 weeks are critical. Listen, if you feel like you've got dysfunction in your family, and we all do, stay with us. If you have to leave town, watch the YouTube channel next week. Get on that. Watch it. Be with it, because this can change your family dynamics. Dream about it this afternoon. Go out before it rains, sit on the porch, go out on the boat before it rains, do something, but think about what this question will do for your family and the change it will make in everybody's hearts. Perspectives change. And you be the one to start it. Don't wait for the other person to start doing it. You do it first. Kids, challenge you. Students, listen. You do this before your parents do. See if you can beat them to the question. I know you're going to do it right as you walk out the door. Kids, don't do that. Like, wait till lunch or something when it's really meaningful, right? Mom, what can I do for you today? Like, just, pull that off. Because it will change your perspective, students. Adults, it'll change your perspective. Let me pray for us as we go. Father in heaven, I am so grateful that you do not drop the ideal. I hope and pray for the families represented here today, God, that this can become a central idea for them. That this one thing starts to move their perspectives away from themselves and toward the other people in their family. God, help my family to do this well. Help me to do this better as a dad and as a husband, as a son, as a brother. God, help me to think about the other people in my life more often, to try to serve them well, to sacrifice that you've given me, what I have available, and to give it for their good. God, I pray this would change our communities because the families in this room are committed to it, and it starts to change the way they interact with one another, which is going to be noticed by the people they interact with in the community, which is going to be noticed, and they're going to know that God's love is greater than the dysfunction we have in our family, that Jesus' grace covers our sins, and it moves us to the ideal. God, I am just broken some days by your love for us, and that you did this. That while we were powerless, you died for us. So thank you for that sacrifice, and thank you for all that you've given us in that. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.